Hi everyone, in this documentary video I would like to talk about some of the impact of corruption in a certain country that are located in Southeast Asia, which is Indonesia. Before we proceed to the documentary, let us hear the definition of corruption according to an independent organization that are called the Transparency International. Transparency International is a global civil society organization leading the fight against corruption. According to them, corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain, and it can be classified as grand, petty, and political, depending on the amount of money lost and the sector where it occurred. In Indonesia, the corruption has reached a level where it causes a great effects on the country as well as for the people. This problem creates an environment where only a small group of people are in favor in, while most of the citizens of Indonesia suffer from their action. In my opinion, with a large amount of corruption that exists in the country, it is going to create a huge gap where the rich and corrupt become richer and the poor will become poorer, a slow growth in the economy of the country, and to create more corruption in the future of the country itself. Before we proceed to the first problem, let us take a look at a short clip taken from the documentary The New Ruler of the World by John Pilger.
We found more than 1,000 mostly young women working crowded together under the glare of strip lighting in temperatures that can reach 40 degrees centigrade. The only air conditioning is upstairs where the bosses are. Working hours can vary and can be increased dramatically when an urgent export order has to be met.
The first problem that are created by a high amount of corruption in a country is that the corruption can create a large gap within the people of the country. As an example, in the clip of the documentary video that we saw earlier, it can be clearly seen that there are a great gap and inequality between the worker and the owner. Some of the inequality is that they strive to survive, and yet they are paid very less compared to the amount of hours that they work for. And the other form of inequality that can be seen in this video is that there are no exact working hour. The working hour that this worker face can increase dramatically, especially when there is a high demand on the item that they produce. According to John Pilger in a part of his documentary, The New Ruler of the World, Indonesia should have been a very rich country because there's an abundance of natural resources all over the country. As an example, in Indonesia, there can be found the largest gold mine, as well as the third largest copper mine in the world. Although this mine is located in Indonesia, the government of Indonesia is not the owner of this mine. Only 50% of the mine belong to the Republic of Indonesia, while another 50% is being controlled by a company called Freeport that are owned by the United States of America. Although the government only controls 50% of it, it should be enough to relocate the money to be able to reduce the poverty in Indonesia. With the presence of these enormous natural resources, how is it possible for the country to have a high number of poverty? The answer lies to the question earlier lies behind how the government processes those resources. First of all, they are not able to bring the full potential of having a natural resources. The government of Indonesia have not been able to completely process the raw material such as the gold and copper ore that are produced by the mine. And since this is the case, they are forced to sell all of the raw material produced to some other country that are able to transform this raw material. The second problem is that not all of the money that they gather due to the sale of the ores goes into the state financial. Those money that can be used to give a better life to the people that live under poverty are taken to their own pocket without the knowledge of other people. This creates a situation where the people that live under poverty will keep on living such way or become worse, and the corrupt will become richer and will have more power to rule others. Therefore, this is an action that should not be done, because not only these people took others' belonging, they also reduce the chance for them to live a better life and possibly harm those people. And based on the facts that are stated above, it can be concluded that the corruption can create a large gap within the people of the country itself. Second of all, with corruption exists in the country, it does not only affect in an establishment of a large gap within the people of the country itself, and it may also affect the country itself by reducing its economic growth. According to the World Bank, in 2014, the economic growth of Indonesia is only 5%. Although this number is not really a small number for a developing country, but it cannot really be compared with other countries that are located around the Southeast Asia, because most of the other countries have an economic growth of roughly about 6%, and some can even reach a really high point, which is an 8% of economic growth. As an example, this graph shows the economic growth for several developing countries that are located in Southeast Asia, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Cambodia. As it can be seen within the graph, there are 2 points that are quite interesting. The first one is on the year of 2009. Most of the economic growth of the countries that are located in Southeast Asia decreased greatly in this year, and yet in only 1 year, most of the countries are able to return to their average economic growth, which is above 5%. The second point is located in the year of 2014. It shows that most of the other developing countries, such as Malaysia and Vietnam, have an economic growth of 6%, while Cambodia and Myanmar with an economic growth of roughly 7 to 8.5%. The low economic growth are also caused by a high rate of corruption. With a high rate of corruption, the country Indonesia have a high debt, which is roughly 298 billion US dollar. This amount can be considered a really high amount for a developing country, especially for Indonesia, that have a really small economic growth rate. With the slow rate of growth of the economic of the country, it has a great impact towards the multiple sector in Indonesia. For an example, the transportation sector. As an easy comparison, most of the countries that are located in Southeast Asia have possessed an effective way of transportation between the city, such as high-speed train, and inside the city, such as an MRT and monorail. All of these effective transportation have not been introduced in Indonesia. The only transportation system that can be relied on inside the city is car or motorbike, while the only available option to travel to other city is either by plane or by a train. Thus, this shows that corruption can affect how fast a country are able to develop in all of the sector. Out of all the research that have been conducted, it has been proven that because of the high level of corruption, the growth of economy in Indonesia can be considered quite low, even among the developing countries that are located in Southeast Asia. The other impact can be caused by the increased number of population. This graph shows the increasing of the amount of population on the earth since 1960. It can clearly be seen that in the year of 2015, the amount of people that are living on the earth have increased twice the amount of the population back then in the year of 1960. The never-ending corruption in the country can also create a great drawbacks to the country itself. According to the graph that we seen earlier, every year there's an increase of roughly 80 million people, which means that the number of population of every country is going to increase over time. With the increasing of the population, there will always be more younger generation compared to the older generation. And with the corruption present in the country, it is a nature for the young people to tend to follow what their predecessors have done. With this issue, if in the future the corruption still exists in the country, more and more people are going to do this action, since in the past there are no action taken against the elder that did the corruption. So the people in the younger generation will feel that it is something that are common and are not restricted in the country. Hence, the corruption in Indonesia must be stopped as soon as possible so that it does not influence the younger generation to perform the same action repeatedly. In conclusion, corruption is an action done out of certain people's greed to take over something that originally does not belong to them, and it will harm innocent people in the process. Corruption has plagued Indonesia for decades. Therefore, the corruption has to be erased from the country as soon as possible. Because if corruption stays in the country, it is going to create a huge gap between the people that live under poverty with the people that did an act of corruption, also growth in the economy of the country, and it will create more corruption in the future of the country itself. That is the end of the documentary video about the impact of corruption in Indonesia. Thank you.